Welcome to this video on the topic of innovation planning process. Now, this is the third video in a series of 4 on this particular topic and in this particular way, based mostly on the Kumar model. So we want to explore further into the process. So far we've established there are different parts to the Kumar model, and in this particular video we're going to look at the Null Context as well as some of the other parts which we'll meet later in the video. But we're going to start with the Null Context connection to the overall model. And in this, of course, we're going to look at the context map, the value web, and the innovation map. And these were mentioned in the previous videos. So let's look at the Null Context. Now, Kumar refers to this mode as looking at the big picture and learn about opportunities. It's important when considering innovation that the innovator not just looks at particular suggestions or proposals or ideas, but looks wider, looks at the full map of what is happening. What's happening in the environment related to the proposal? Are there new proposals coming out from competitors in a similar area? Has customer tastes changed? Has the government brought out some measures related to the product, perhaps in the context of taxation or health warnings or advisory documentation for consumers? There are many aspects to consider when looking at a proposal to innovate a product or innovate some process. And in order to get a clear picture of what is actually required, it's necessary to look at the big picture. In other words, look at the proposal itself and look at the wider environmental factors that may impinge upon the opportunity. This mode, the Null Context, this mode looks into research concerning competitors, industries, networks, markets, financial models, technologies, processes, products, services, brands, and channels. And there may be more. These are ones just that come to mind when we're developing this. But in other words, looking at the big picture, looking at the whole environmental set of factors that may impinge upon the innovation, as I said earlier. But they may include aspects from any one of these, or perhaps ones that I haven't listed here that may in some sense be relevant to particular proposals or particular contemplated innovations. Understanding the company and how its surroundings build invaluable knowledge to develop collaborations and search for opportunities to build innovations. It's important that the company has got a methodology. It's got a way forward. It's looking to innovate. It must have an agreed methodology. What happens first? What happens second? What investigation should be carried out? What research should be done? How should it be dealt with? And what are the determining factors as to whether the innovation should be carried forward or not? In other words, at some stage in this whole research, this whole consideration of whether an innovation should be adopted or not, in all of that, there must be a time when a decision has to be made. Go forward or stop. And what are the criteria that determines go forward or stop? And these must be clearly understood and set out almost at the start. The Null Context, well, the following tools can be used in this mode. The context map, It's a tool to provide an overview of the organization's contextual elements, i.e. products, services, messages, companies, even relationships within companies, relationships between workers and management, relationships between customers and existing products. It looks at the whole context within which the decision has to be made and looks at the linkages that are within that context. As I said, the linkage between the employees and management. That could be an important factor as to whether the product can be dealt with the innovation can be dealt with and implemented. So it's looking at the context to see if the innovation can be moved forward. There's also an innovation map, an overview on the rate of innovation within the industry and the company. The innovation map really sets out the history of innovation. What are the issues? What has gone right? What has gone wrong in the past? How were they dealt with? What are the obstacles? What were the outcomes? What could have been done better? What learning was there to be had from past experience? It encompasses a lot of the experiential learning that is kept within organizations based on their history of innovation and change. But it's important to have that because it may be a pointer as to which is the best route to go forward when considering a new proposed innovation. Also, there's the value web, a tool to assist to assess, the value of the contextual elements. A value web is it's estimates of costs, of likely benefits, it's an estimate of the amount of resources that will be absorbed within the organization, and also look at the way in which the organization could use those resources had it not committed them to this particular innovation. If they had committed the resources elsewhere, would there be a better return? So the value web is critically looking at the advantages of pursuing a proposed innovation as opposed to leaving it where it is, and perhaps any free resource that would have been used for the innovation could now be committed to something else, which would yield an even higher return. But of course, in doing that, the organization also has to remember there is a short-term and long-term return. Sometimes companies make the decision to innovate now in the expectation of making bigger returns in the future, whereas using the same resources now to do something else may yield better returns in the short term, but in the long term may not be so advantageous. So it's complex, as you can see. It involves a lot of thinking and it needs careful planning. But this is the way in which the context in which innovation must be viewed is carried forward, or should be carried forward, certainly in the context of the Kumar model. And then we come to framing insights, and I've got a list here of the type of influences that can impinge upon the insights. User data analysis, context data analysis, list sorting, flow experience model, system simulation, analytic frameworks. There may be others, but just for the moment, we can imagine that we have to frame our insight. We have to frame our opinion. And we frame our opinion based on a lot of these tools. So the frame insight mode is the process of finding patterns in research and extracting relevant data. This mode builds on previous modes, the sense intent, know people, and know context. So in other words, at the insight phase, when we're truly getting an insight as to whether the innovation is good, bad, desirable, or not desirable, at this insight stage, it's drawing on the other various parts, knowing people, getting the sense of whether the idea is a good one or a bad one, what's it based on, the evidence. It's bringing it all together to form this insight. The process is for innovators to collect data and research from multiple perspectives to arrive at relationships, patterns, and observations. So it's necessary when considering an innovation to try and get a perspective from different viewpoints. Get it from the market perspective on the proposed innovation. Get it on a temporal one. Is it in the long run, is it a good idea? In the short run, is it a good idea? When will it yield results? Get it from a HR perspective. How much training will be required to get operators adept, skilled at producing the innovated product? What sort of capital investment will be required? Where will the raw materials come from if it is based on raw materials and that type of production? Who will supply it? What will be the costs? What are the implications for the return on the investment? There are many questions to ask when forming insight, but it's really drawing on the other parts of the model, the Kumar model that we set out in parts 1 and 2, and we're looking at also in this part, which will help to give us a clearer picture as to whether an innovation is desirable or not. An example provided by Kumar, an analysis tool can be used to assess people's daily activities to identify problems they may face. This then forms the basis for innovators to identify unmet customer needs. In other words, the investigators looking at the proposal for some sort of innovation, change to a product or change to some process within the business, when they're looking at it, they could look at what is happening right now and what is likely to happen in the future if the innovation is implemented, and try to pull in as much evidence, as much hard evidence as they can find to shed light on this. And in part 2, we also talked about sometimes it's necessary to form focus groups and interview customers and try to get a sense from the marketing department how customers are likely to respond to the changes. Try to get a fix, in other words, on the innovation. Is it going to be successful or not? The following tools can be used in this mode. User data analysis, tool to organize and analyze data from research. We could use statistical packages on PCs or on high-powered computers. We can use these to get some sort of insight into what is likely to happen if the innovation is pushed forward. We also have the context data analysis, a tool to help structure data to arrive at patterns and trends and historical developments. Sometimes we can't get access to statistical data. If the product is entirely new, or the process is entirely new. This is the innovation, something completely new. Well, there is no history. There's no evidence from the past, no facts, no figures. So it might be based on what people think about the innovation as proposed right now. There's no evidence from the past. It doesn't exist. So sometimes organizations have to listen to what customers are saying, see if there's a pattern in what they're saying, try to work out what's likely to happen based on what the customers are saying. We could have system simulation, a tool, e.g. software, to visualize and simulate behaviors to analyze any trends or patterns. Statisticians can do this. They can set up models, and then in talking through the issues with, let's say, the marketing department, they can fill in likely figures. They're not exactly perhaps realistic in this as will work out in the future, but they're the best estimates at the time. And then, using statistical and quite sophisticated mathematical processes, they can simulate what is likely to happen. They can do it under various assumptions. They can assume the return on the innovation will be optimistic. It's good. It's a good innovation. So the return will be good in the future, or it could be pessimistic, or it could be in between somewhere. And then they can look at the ups and downs and what's likely to go wrong and feed it all into a model, which becomes quite complex. But it does help management make the decision. Of course, it has to also be borne in mind that it's all based on assumptions. And whether the assumptions are upheld in the future or not is always a problem. So explore concepts. Here we're talking about concept definition, concept matrix map, concept systemizer, the scenario plan, and the concept manager. The focus on this mode is to identify concepts or innovations that directly arise from insights and research. Having got insights into the market, the way the market's working, and having got some research figures back from the market, gaps in the market may be determined, may be observed, or maybe worked out. There's a gap. The customers would really like to see something, but it's not there. That's some of the feedback that's coming back to the business. That's an insight. And out of this insight, now a concept for a development starts to take shape to make a new product that fills that gap. It may take an existing product and add more functionality or extra dimensions to it, which fills the gap. But this is part of the insight that's come back. Now, based on the insight, they form a concept. This is the concept of filling the gap. And filling the gap means innovating, changing something, changing a product, changing a process, doing something that will better satisfy the customer, and therefore, of course, generate more sales. In this mode, innovators take part in the following activities. Concept exploration, trying to identify the right ideas arising from the insight. The insight tells them that there is something that can be done. The insight is that the production process may be changed. It could be innovated. It can be streamlined, let's say. Now they're looking for a concept. The concept is to streamline it, and how can it be done? What are the right ideas? What's the right method? What's the right approach? It's not just good enough to say that the production process will be changed. It has to be changed in the right direction, based on the insights, based on the feedback, based on the analysis. The same with a customer product innovation. It has to be based on feedback. It has to be the right sort. It has to be well thought out. It has to be criticized and justified. And out of this, we get the concept exploration. This is what concept exploration does. It's looking at what are the right ideas. Organization, well, the organization of concepts into categories or hierarchies adds to efficiencies of concept. Sometimes when looking at, let's say, a product innovation, we could look at it at different levels. Who's it aimed at? Which market is it aimed at? Are the markets distinct? Are they segmented in some way? Are there different segments to the market? What's the requirements of the market? So we can start to say, well, this particular innovation or change can apply to that market, but if we slightly change it again, it would better suit a different market. So it's the organization of the work that is changed within the concept. The organization needs to look at concepts and try to categorize them for efficiency's sake. It may be the case that a particular development aimed at a particular segment of the market could also apply to a different segment, or perhaps a segment in a different market in a different country. But now, by grouping those two, there could be efficiencies in production, because it's not just produced for one market, it's produced for two markets. They're able to run the production process together, and there is an efficiency in production. Or, if you like, under the heading here, an efficiency in organization. So organizing the categories into hierarchies and looking at different categories and looking at where the innovation is aimed can tell the management that the overall demand, likely demand in the future, is from one segment of one market plus a different segment of a different market plus perhaps some market overseas, and that will give it the fuller picture about how much is to be made, what sort of production system is required, and what's the capacity of that system. Evaluation. Well, it's necessary to have continuous evaluation of concepts. Ideas need to be stronger, and they need to be reliable. They can't be based on imagination. The whole process starts with imagination. That's where the insights come from. The start in somebody's mind, we've got an insight here that something can be improved. That moves along the process until we get down towards making it to the doing part. But all the time it has to be evaluated as to whether it's a good idea still. Is there genuinely a market there for it? Will it cover the costs? Will it generate a profit? So it's a question of looking at the development as it moves from the concept to the practical product, the practical innovation. As it moves through to that, it should be gauged at every stage and evaluated at every stage as to whether it's still worth continuing. Don't just simply commit resources at one point in time and commit more resources throughout till it gets to the end and then evaluate it. It's too late then. The resources have been spent. So evaluate throughout to see if it's worth the expenditure and the continued investment. So explore concepts. Well, the following tools can be used to explore concepts. Concept definition, a tool to define concepts through statements, diagrams, or sketches. Try to work out what's the concept. Try to make the concept as more realistic and visible, even tactile if possible. Try to make one that can be touched. Model it so people can look at it in 3 dimensions perhaps. If not, draw it. Get it designed. Get it on a computer screen. Use a CAD package and design it out. Rotate it. See if it is practical, if it can be done. Look at what customers say about it. Get feedback on the proposal. And all of this can lead to great savings. If it turns out that the idea is not a good one, then there's no investment. There's no waste of money down the line. There is, of course, the cost of bringing it to that stage. But at least there's no significant costs in actually producing the product. The innovated product, I should say. Look at scenario planning, a tool to create alternative scenarios using explored concepts. Scenario planning is taking, let's say, an innovated product and seeing how it can be used in different contexts. Building up scenarios, the what if. What if someone needed something to do something and this product was available? Would it fit in that situation? Now that may sound very vague, but it's trying to imagine situations where this product could be used. And also getting customers or potential customers to get involved to see if they can imagine ways in which the product can be used, and perhaps they can find alternative uses which will widen its appeal even further. So instead of making a product that has got a single use, the company now finds it's making a product that could be used in various ways, and that in turn can help the marketing initiative, because now it can be marketed as applying in various ways. Look at the concept manager, a tool which sets up a database to manage innovations developed by innovator teams. In other words, if the organization is large and complex, there might be lots of ideas coming forward all the time, and it's necessary for management to be able to capture these ideas, capture them, save them, and then critically review them, analyze them, discuss with interested parties and with focus groups which ideas are good, which ones are not so good, which ones can be carried forward, which ones should be jettisoned. And the way to do that is to try to imagine a concept manager. It might be just a spreadsheet where ideas are put into different cells, but they're stored there. They're ideas. And insofar as they've been captured, then the management may want to take it to the next level to see what could happen next. See what market it could appeal to. What's the size of the market? what are the downsides of this particular proposal. So in other words, if it does it for every particular concept that comes through, out of all of this list, it might find some that are worth carrying on, some are just perhaps not feasible or not such good ideas at that moment in time. They could still be held on record and reviewed at a later stage, but not to carry forward at that particular moment. Some may not. So using a concept manager, which as I said may just be a spreadsheet for capturing ideas and just keeping them so that they could at a later stage be brought back and reviewed. They may have their day in the future. They may be useful in the future, but not right now. Some may be, some may not. And that ends our video on part 3 of innovation planning. So now we're getting to the stage where we're moved from thinking, from this cerebral state, just imagining something, which is the act of imagination, which resides in somebody's head, to change a product, to change a piece of machinery, to change a process. We've moved now towards looking at the different ways in which we can try to refine the idea and see if there's merit in the idea through these concepts. And that's where we've got to at this moment. There's one more video to go on this that we want to look at on this particular theme, the Kumar theme. But that's the source which I've mentioned earlier, and that's all I'm going to deal with here. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.